Yo, what's up, everybody? We are back with episode 1 of the Kingdom Blueprint podcast.
Yeah,
and this one's a special one.
This one is a special one. We got some Kleenex kind of close to it.
It might be a Kleenex type of episode.
we got some tissue because we gonna be talking about daddy issues. So
man, what did we say? It was we gonna be trauma bonding.
Yeah,
today.
We got some mutual trauma around how we were raised or not raised by our
the lack thereof.
yeah. But first, before we get into that though, we just got to shout out, man. We're calling this episode 1. It's technically our second episode. We call it the first one, episode 0, intentionally because it was the intro, us telling about ourselves and sharing our stories and introducing ourselves to you guys. So I just want to say shout out to everybody that's supported, that's listened so far, that's reposted on Instagram, that's reached out to us.
Definitely.
Our first episode, at the time of recording this, our first episode actually dropped today.
Yeah.
And it's now on all streaming platforms. So wherever you get your podcasts, it's also on YouTube. And we've been getting a good response.
It's crazy.
It's surreal.
Completely blown away by the response, and yeah, people were just really receptive of it. And to even go on what we talked about a little bit last week on like the fear of like actually doing something and not running from it. And I was terrified when it went live. Yeah.
So it didn't even feel real to me because I'm not going to lie to you. Like I didn't have launching a podcast on my 2024, 2025 bingo card. No. Like it wasn't even part of the plan.
I don't think I ever had it on my bingo card.
Yeah. I think, and obviously like as this unfolds, we'll share more of our stories and how this came about. But I know we've talked about this a lot. It came about like rather quickly.
Yeah. I think the process of it was a little bit long.
The thought.
Yeah. And actually getting into the podcast was kind of just on go mode. And really, I just blame that really to one of the people behind the camera. Los kind of just went 100 miles an hour and was like, oh yeah, you should do a podcast. Yeah. Like, oh, but we don't have microphones. Bet I got a microphone. We could do it.
I got the equipment.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna just get a soundboard.
We're good.
We're good.
Yeah. Cause I'm not gonna lie, it was just a thought and a conversation. We probably like, shout out to Los, because if it wasn't for you, bro, like we wouldn't be here.
I don't know if it would have happened as quickly.
It would be 2026 before.
I told you I would have ran. I would have had every excuse in the book to not make it happen. Every excuse, we would have been running.
Yeah, but for real. But again, like we talked about last week, I think just the importance of community, I think really shines here because again, like that's what it's about, having people in your corner that can hold you accountable, spur along your dreams and visions. So shout out to Los, shout out to Matt. We appreciate you guys. And we're gonna keep giving y'all flowers. I know we shouted you out last week. We're gonna shout you out every week at this point.
Yeah, I'm not gonna get tired of it either.
So, me either.
But yeah, let's jump into, I mean, for me, it's been probably the episode that I've like looking on the list.
Yes.
Probably the most excited to talk about, I think, just because of our situations now.
Right.
But fatherhood.
We're
going to talk about
fatherhood.
Today.
Yeah. And I'm excited about this one too. We talked a lot about like what we have in common, and obviously this is one of them, being dads, but also a little bit about our upbringings and the relationships or lack thereof that we had with our dads. So yeah, we just felt like it was something that we should talk about because we know a lot of what we'll share in our stories isn't just unique to us. Right. Like I think a lot of what we've been through, people we know even have similar journeys.
For sure.
And sometimes you got to talk about the trauma and talk about the daddy issues.
You got to let it out. You can't keep it in. You can't keep that bottled in. But I think what kind of, to bring it all together was when I did the fatherlessness on...
The fatherlessness tapes. That's what we call it.
Yeah, on Instagram. And I didn't realize how many people like resonated with that. Yeah. Like, oh yeah, man. Like I didn't grow up with my father in my life. And not to think that like, oh, your situation is very unique to you and oh, no one else walked through what I walked through. But I think it's necessary now
Yeah.
to have the conversation, to kind of open it up, be a little more vulnerable than I think I was
Yeah.
on the little Instagram post. But
Yeah.
I'm ready to kind of dive in.
Do you want to give some context? So what we keep joking about these fatherlessness tapes. What was that about? What is this?
So I looked, and it was in the beginning of 2024.
Okay.
It was February 2024. We had a conversation, and I kind of felt led to kind of share a little bit about my story on my lack of relationship with my dad, how that impacted my life, how it impacted my thought process on being a parent.
Yeah.
And really at that time, nobody knew, but Dem and I were actually pregnant with our second.
Yeah.
And what scared me the most about being a parent was having a son, because of the lack of relationship that I had with my dad. So knowing that I was having a son, I was kind of trying to process all of these emotions, and I was scared, and kind of that's where the video went. And I tried my best not to slip up and tell people that I was having a son in those videos. But
like we didn't announce it yet.
We hadn't announced it, but there was just so much going on, I think, internally on me actually thinking about having a son and what that relationship was going to look like.
Right.
And that's kind of the origin of the fatherlessness tapes. And now we're here, and we're going to unpack all of the trauma.
All of the trauma. Yeah, and those tapes, man, we keep calling them tapes. They were Instagram posts. The Instagram reels on his personal Instagram. Go check them out. They still, you didn't delete them, right?
I didn't take them off. No, they're still there.
All right. And you just got really vulnerable and shared your story. And what I thought was cool was, I think how deep you went, but also just seeing the traction, right? Seeing the comments that you were getting. I know people were like probably reaching out to you via DM and text message too. And for me, because also like I work in social media, so I'm always trying to figure out what works best for social and like looking at numbers and whatnot. So for me, like the fact that you shared these longer format videos that I think you were going for maybe a little over 30 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, it ended up being longer than I thought.
Yeah, but it still got really good traction. Like you still got thousands of views and comments and all of that. And for me, what that showed me was that like his story is really resonating with people. Like this is a topic that people can relate to. And we know people that have non-existent fathers and non-existent relationships, or people who have rocky relationships. Again, these stories aren't unique to us, but to be able to kind of talk about them, release some of like what we've held on to, but also like help other people in the process. Like that's always the goal.
Yeah. So that was cool, and I think it just led to this when we sat down and we first discussed, hey, what topics do we want to talk about? That was probably
like top of the list.
Yeah, that was out the gate. Like, hey, we need to go talk about some fatherhood stuff and kind of open up a little bit. So
so we here. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Let's dive in. I guess we can start with our personal upbringings and what that was like. So I know you touched a little bit on yours. You want to go first? You want me to go first? You want to jump into?
I'll cry
first.
Go first? I'll cry first. Well, no, I hope I don't cry. I'm gonna try not to. I'm trying.
It's all good, man. This is a safe space.
It is a safe space.
If
I'm
you
gonna try not to
cry.
cry. I might.
It's all good. They can't hear the tears on audio. They can't hear the tears.
So if I do get choked up, don't slaughter me in the comments if I get choked up. But so I grew up single mom. I have three sisters. I grew up around, my mom, my three sisters, and I didn't know any different. Yeah. Like growing up, I had my mom, I had my uncles.
This is how it is.
Yeah, this was normal. It was just everyday life. I had uncles who played like huge roles in my life. And I mentioned that in the videos on Instagram. I'm beyond grateful for the male pillars that I had in my life. I just had to process things differently as a kid because I knew that my uncles weren't my dad. Like I have cousins who that's their dad, who they're going to have moments with their dad. And I had to try to navigate and not take moments away from my cousins.
Interesting.
Like not thinking, I just don't want you to resent me.
So as a kid, you're already thinking like that. You like,
yeah, the first time I
let me not take too much time with your dad.
For sure. The first time I really had that thought, I was probably 9 or 10.
Oh, wow.
When I first had the thought. And I'm, like I said, I'm super thankful for two of my uncles who were just above and beyond, like when it came to everything and sports and being there and making sure that I had the things that I needed. Mm-hmm. But also at the same time, if I wanted to, go get extra work or go play basketball and I want to ask one of my uncles, I remember the first time I had the thought was like, well, if he takes me out and he's spending time with me, is my cousin going to think, why are you spending time with him? That could be time spent with me.
Wow.
So I wouldn't ask. And I would go and just do it on my own.
Yeah, the fact that you're already thinking about that at 9 or 10 is wild.
Yeah, that was kind of the first time. And then like it really started to get where as I got older and I was playing more sports and started playing AAU basketball and started playing baseball more and going to games and realizing that it's just my mom. Yeah. My teammates have mom and dad. After the games, they're running over and both of their parents are there. And that's really when it started to like click like, oh, where is my dad? Like, why is he not here?
Yeah.
What did I do that he didn't want to be around? So maybe 13 is when I asked my mom for the first time, like,
okay,
who's my dad? And actually, I didn't even ask her who my dad was. I just asked her if he was black.
You said, Mom, what am I?
So only because growing up in school, everybody would be like, oh, you're black and what?
Got you.
So I was like, I'm black and Filipino.
Yeah.
I didn't even know. I just assumed because everybody around me was telling me that I was black and what?
Right.
I was black and Filipino. So I just told everybody I was black and Filipino.
Yeah.
I didn't even know if I was black.
So you guessing because Mom is Filipino.
My mom's Filipino, so I'm Filipino.
And you never met Dad?
No. I have no idea.
You don't even know.
I'm just like, yeah, I'm black.
No, I got some color in me.
I'm black.
Yeah.
So then I asked my mom, like 13, like, is my dad black?
Yeah.
She was like, yes, he's black. I was like, cool.
You said, bet I was right all along.
That was it. So like I didn't ask any questions outside of that. But it also produced kind of a chip on my shoulder. And this like, I was just angry. But I tried to like bottle it. Yeah. And I used it in sports. I used it in whatever I was doing. I just used this chip or this anger to just, I'm going to be better than you. Because I don't have a dad and I have to prove something. Yeah. And you got both of your parents. Yeah. So I'm going to just literally try to destroy you in anything that I did. Yeah. And then I got a little older and I would ask some questions here and there. Like who is he? What's his name? Yeah. Is he from here? Where's he from? So she answered some questions, and not until I was in my 20s did I say like, I want to try to find him. And shouts out to Pastor Jules.
Shout out Pastor Jules.
Pastor Jules is the person that said, no, you need to reach out and find him. And getting, like, he was all about restoration. He's like, we're going to restore this. And I reached out, nothing. Yeah. Like, no comment back.
So you found him?
Found him, reached out, nothing.
Nothing.
And then my mom found him on Facebook. Okay. Reached out. They talked for a little bit. He ended up reaching out to me. Wow. I reached out. COVID hit. Okay. So now I'm emailing him over during COVID. Yeah. Like, this is who I am. Like, I don't know anything about you. Yeah. We had a couple conversations. He was like, I want to meet you. Really? Yeah, like, I know it's COVID and can I just swing by? Like, we'll stay separate. Like, I just want to know who you are. Really? It's like, all right. We just had Amelia.
Yeah.
So really, I'm thinking, I don't know this dude. We in the middle of a pandemic.
Right.
But you know what? Let's do it. Like, I just became a dad. I'm just trying to process everything. I need this closure.
Right.
So I meet him. It's great. We talk. And then we talk for maybe a year on and off. And then completely falls off. Haven't heard from him since. So it's just been like an up and down type of emotion and roller coaster when it comes to that.
So what was that like, right? You said he completely falls off. You haven't heard from him since. Did he just stop responding to messages? Like what? Because at this point, you guys are I'm assuming texting back and forth?
Texting, I'll jump on a phone call with him every now and then. Yeah. When he just did not. I think I texted him on like Father's Day.
Got it. You sent him a Happy Father's Day?
Boy,
send him a Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay.
Which probably took a lot for you to send, because this is your first time sending this to your dad?
Yeah, didn't meet him until I was 30.
Right.
I'm 30 years old.
Yeah.
I never met you, but we're building this relationship, and I figured if I wanted to work and I don't need anything from you.
Right.
But I do want to build a relationship.
Right. I
have a daughter. It would be great for her to meet her grandfather. So I'm just, trying to build a relationship. I text him Happy Father's Day. Nothing. I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Maybe he's busy, nothing. So I wait until the holidays. I think Thanksgiving, I shoot him another one, nothing.
Wow.
So I'm like, all right. Hurts more the second time.
Yeah.
Hurts more the second time when you...
Yeah.
Because in my head, when I met him, I was instantly 11 years old.
You're that kid again.
Super excited.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to describe that feeling of here's someone that I've wanted to have a relationship with my entire life.
Right.
And now it's actually happening.
Right.
In a very pivotal time in my life.
Right.
Where I'm stepping into being a father. I already have a lot of ideas in my head of how am I even going to be a father?
Yeah.
Then he comes in and I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I talk to Dem and I'm like, this is going to be amazing.
Wow.
And Dem being Dem is like, I'm so happy, but she's reserved.
Right.
She's like, I don't know.
Yeah, she's like the realist. She's like,
she's like, I just don't know. Like, he's kind of sounding, it's too good to be true right now.
Yeah.
Don't let all of your walls down.
Interesting.
And me, it's hard.
Yeah. I mean, well, you talked about being that kid again, right? That just wanted that relationship with his dad. So it's like, how do you not go all in? So when you meet him, like back up a bit. So when you meet him, because I know you talked about, right, the resentment, the having a chip on your shoulder growing up, the anger growing up. But when you meet him, like all of that's gone. Like there's no feelings like that.
The excitement is there, but when I stood in front of him, there's the like, I'm kind of sizing you up a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out. I'm just trying to read everything.
Yeah.
So it was weird to me to be standing in front of somebody and I'm looking at him and his arms kind of look like my arms. His frame kind of looks like my frame.
So you kind of look like me,
and
bro.
I've never seen that before.
Right.
So there was still a little bit of anger, not necessarily hate, but there were emotions like what made you not want to be around? So those conversations were interesting to have those first couple months.
So you went there with them, like you pretty much off the bat,
sure.
like asked him like, yo, what's up?
For sure.
Yeah.
Had to.
Yeah.
Because I've only had not even one side of the story.
Yeah.
Because I never asked.
Right.
So I just had this idea of a very stereotypical view of a black father.
Yeah.
I had a kid, I dipped, Rolling Stone, got multiple kids, multiple baby mama. It was so stereotypical in my head.
Yeah, good old black American dad.
Right? So
story.
I didn't know any better until I had to have hard conversations. Like I had to have a hard conversation with my mom.
Yeah.
And that was wild.
Yeah, like about the whole situation.
For sure.
Yeah.
Like why, what was the decision behind bringing a child into the world and now it's just you? Like, why were you a single mom?
Yeah.
What were those decisions? And she told me the story of he was separated from his first wife, had kids, is originally from Houston, was out here in San Francisco, met my mom, they dated for a while, and he approached my mom, was like, hey, I'm kind of working things out with my ex-wife.
Oh,
like we're
wow.
trying to repair our marriage.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, my mom's pregnant.
Wow.
So when I asked my mom, she said, I didn't want you to be the reason he stayed with me. If he was going to stay with me, he was going to stay with me.
Yeah.
Not because I was having a kid, not because I was trapping him. So my mom said, you were my son. So he ends up dipping.
Wow.
Going back, working things out.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, I have a sibling that's either a couple months apart from me, or I might be older. I don't know. The timeline doesn't work out, comes back, sees me all my first holidays. Thanksgiving, Christmas is here. Ask my mom, like, whose kid is this? And she just said, mine. He's mine.
So he didn't even know. Oh, wow.
So that wrecked my life.
Yeah.
I went my entire life thinking I had this deadbeat dude that didn't want to be a part of nothing.
Yeah.
To finding out that my mom made a decision that was best for her in the moment. So I had this view of who this guy was for a long time, and it wasn't necessarily the case.
Wow.
So having to have a conversation and him tell me like, no, I saw you. Like, I knew who you were. He knew my older sister by name.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, don't call her.
Like, don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that, bro.
And he asked my mom, but my mom was very adamant about, no, I was going to raise you by myself. So having that conversation with my mom and being honest with my mom, and I'm so grateful for my mom. She did everything that she could.
Yeah.
And I told her that you made decisions that were best for you.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful because you were the best mom and dad that I could have ever wanted. Mm-hmm. But there were decisions that were selfish in the moment. And ultimately, my childhood and my teens and my like young adulthood, there was consequences.
Yeah.
And how I acted, and ultimately affected my mindset on going into being a father.
Right. Yeah.
And that was hard.
Yeah. No, I think it's that's one thing that I feel like, people don't always think about. And it's something that I'm even trying to be mindful now that I'm a dad is you don't always think about how like your life choices and decisions are going to affect your next generations. Right. And even
For
down
sure.
the line.
For sure.
You know what I mean? Like you might be able to think a year or two in advance where they're little kids, but it's like you don't understand necessarily what your today decisions are going to do for them when they're 13, 14, 15. Right.
Yeah. And I mean, me and them were together pre-Jesus. So we were living a lifestyle that was the opposite of what we're living now.
Yeah.
And the kid topic would come up, and I was just fearful.
Yeah.
Of, am I gonna be the same as my dad?
Yeah.
Am I gonna be another statistic? Because I'm just thinking, hey, we're dating. Eventually, we're gonna get married.
Right.
But if we want to have kids, like if it happens, like okay,
if it happens, it happens.
It happens. It happens. Yeah. But there was that fear of, am I gonna just fall into the same exact pattern?
Yeah, that's real.
And that was ultimately what was scary for me stepping into fatherhood. And I probably could have went a little deeper on some of the stuff, and we might when we get into us actually being dads. But enough about me, so I don't cry.
You held it together.
I held it together. I was just losing a little bit of the anger.
I'm not. Yeah.
Still got a little bit.
Yeah.
Down here in this area.
The anger out, and then the tears.
So tears will come out later when we talk about our kids, and I get softened up a little bit,
right?
Because they're gonna flow. But enough about me.
Yeah.
Let's hear Dom's story.
Yeah, man. I love what you said, and that's first of all, thanks for sharing your story and being open and vulnerable. I know we talked about that last week. One thing we want to do on this podcast is be transparent, be open, be real. Like if we're gonna do it, like let's go all in. You know what I mean? So I appreciate you, and I just learned some new stuff, man. I don't think I knew. We've talked a lot about this, but certain aspects I'm learning new too. So this is good to even just have this conversation. Yeah. So I appreciate you for sharing. Man, in terms of my story, for me it was a bit different. So, my earliest memories. So to back up, also raised by a single mom. My mom and dad were never married. They were, together at one point, dating kind of off and on.
Yeah.
But never actually locked in solid. Mom gets pregnant, has me, and again, they're kind of off and on at this point. So the reason I bring up their relationship and them being off and on is because that is literally what spilled out into my relationship with my dad, right? There was this very kind of off and on mentality. Because so for me, I can't say my dad was non-existent. He was there. There was just a lot of inconsistency.
Right.
So, I have memories of both good and bad. Like it wasn't always bad. I spent a lot of time with him. I have early memories of being at his house and spending the night and, spending a couple of days here and there. He owned and operated a small business growing up. So, I have some memories of like going to work with him, right? So there was definitely like time that I spent with him where things were good and times that I cherished, times that I think were crucial just to definitely my formative years, but definitely helped shape me a bit. So, I can't sit here and like just fully bash him and like the relationship, but there was a lot of inconsistency, right? It would be good for 3 months and then I don't hear from you for 3 months.
Right.
Right. And that, as I got older and kind of unpacked just a lot about my mentality, my personality, and how I move, I was able to kind of trace that back to that inconsistency, right? I grew up, I've always kind of been somebody that struggled with like insecurity and anxiety. And I really think part of that was because I didn't have that positive like male role model like in my household 24/7. And I had male role models too, just like you. Shout out to, my uncles. They all, know who they are. Shout out to family friends who kind of stepped in, but it's not the same as having like your actual dad like in your house 24/7. Yeah. Right. Like cause mom was there 24/7, right? Like I know you alluded to that. Yours was the same way. Mom was there. Right. So it's not the same when dad's also not there either. So, with me, it was just a lot of inconsistency. There were, like I said, there were good times and there were bad times. I think also too, as I got, I think maybe, I can't remember how old I was, maybe 6, 7. My dad also got married, to, my stepmom at the time. They're no longer together, but my stepmom at the time. So that also drove a wedge between my mom and my dad because, he was with somebody else. And as I got older and kind of realized the dynamics of their relationship, I truly think that my mom, never really kind of felt out of love with my dad. I think deep down, like, that's what she wanted. And the fact that, like, he ends up marrying somebody else, like, there was a lot of trauma there.
Yeah.
And even still, you know, I don't know all of the ins and outs of it, but as I mentioned earlier, with my dad being inconsistent, where there'd be times where he was there and then he wasn't. Again, I had this very similar to you. I had this picture of like, you know, this is just how he operates. It's just how it is. It's all on him.
Yeah.
And mom is there with me 24/7. Mom and I, we have a great relationship, so she can do no wrong in my eyes.
Right.
So whatever's going on, it's him.
Yeah.
Right. And as you get older, right, you become an adult. You understand that it gets complex.
For
it's
sure.
not always on one person. And my mom's no longer here with me, and I haven't gotten a chance to have these actual conversations with her. She died when I was 16, like I mentioned. So I don't necessarily know the ins and outs from her perspective. So I can't really, you know, I'll never really speak to that. But as I've had conversations with my dad, he's told me, you know, there were times where they just were at odds, and he can't come around right now.
Yeah.
Right. So again, as I'm grown now and understand how relationships work,
Right.
those things happen. And for me, I think that is also why, you know, when we talk about our faith, when we talk about Jesus, we talk about the Bible, you see why God intends family and marriage and kids to be within a certain set of boundaries.
Yeah.
Like you understand, like, it's not that, you know, and I've heard a number of pastors say this, but basically what you hear, you know, if you go to church for a while, is, you know, God wants us to have freedom. He gives us freedom. He just sets boundaries so we can, you know, access that freedom and really live life. And I think a lot of times we look at the boundaries of marriage or family, and we look at that as something that doesn't feel like it's free, right? Like if you tell, like, you know, when you tell people they shouldn't be having sex outside of marriage, right? People are like, oh, that's a boundary I don't want.
Right.
I don't want to stick to.
Right.
Like, I mean, that was me, right? So this is
sure.
being real, right? But it's like now that I'm on this side and I am married, right? And we are living, right, in a certain way and running after God. It's like, oh no, I get it. It's not that God is trying to set these boundaries on us and keep us from things. On the negative sense, it's more so, let me set these boundaries so you can have freedom and not have to worry about some of these things that I know will happen if you step outside of these boundaries, right? So all that to say, roundabout way of saying, right, like, because my mom and dad weren't married, they didn't do things the quote unquote right way, that had lasting effects. Like, their relationship was never solid. So because of that, my relationship with my dad wasn't as solid as it could have been. So yeah, again, my relationship with my dad was just that, in and out. Some days he was there, some games he was there for growing up, some he wasn't. I have
a question for you, like before you go on, because of that, our relationship with our dads are different.
Yeah.
So I always say, on my end, you don't miss what you don't know.
Right.
So I never missed what I didn't know. I just knew I was angry.
Yeah.
So on your end, what is that process like for you in that frame of, I know that it can be good, but then I know that it could be bad, because I always think I would much rather walk through my situation than that. And I know that's like a little bit selfish to think that, but
no, I get what you mean.
You know, because I just don't know. Like, I don't know if I would have been able to handle the in and out, because I already couldn't handle the absence. So the in and out, how did you process that?
Good question. For me, so when I'm younger, much like you, and I'll take it back a bit. When I'm a kid, like a little kid, like, you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, you tend to think that how you live is how everybody lives.
Yeah.
Like, so even when I was younger, I grew up. So originally, you know, born in my first few years of life, I'm in Oakland. I'm in East Oakland, right? So that's a different kind of dynamic and demographic. Right. We moved to Fairfield area, so more kind of North Bay area. So more suburban, you know, and just a different way of life out there. So moving from Oakland to Fairfield and seeing this suburban life and now going to a new school, that was the first time I realized that my lifestyle and my family dynamic was different. Like, because all of my friends and classmates, like to your point, right? It's two parents showing up to the games. It's two parents at the school as I'm starting to make friends and I'm going over to the friend's house for parties or sleepovers, right? Like they got mom and dad there. And I'm like, I've only seen this on TV. No, right. Real talk. Because I'm a 90s baby, right? So I grew up watching all the sitcoms and whatnot, Fresh Prince and Cosby Show. I don't even know if I can mention the Cosby Show, but all of the sitcoms growing up where, you know, Boy Meets World. I'm just going to go on a 90s rant. I hope this is nostalgic for somebody.
Yeah.
And you're seeing like the mom and dad. And for me, it was cool to watch on TV.
For sure.
But I hadn't seen it. And in Oakland, like, same, like my friends in Oakland, like same, single mom, like little black kids, single mom, like literally. So when I moved to Fairfield, I'm like, oh,
it's different.
Y'all living like Boy Meets World on here. Like
it's different.
This is different. It's mom and dad here, big brother. It's just like, this is real. This is
good
real.
For you.
So I think at that point is when I realized something wasn't right.
Okay.
Right? Because again, you don't know what you don't know. It's not until you see something that you realize, okay, it's different. I'm like, oh, okay, all of my friends have mom and dad. And I think that was the first moment where I kind of felt other than, I felt different. I didn't feel like I kind of like fit in, even though I had really good friends growing up. Yeah. Like it just was, I couldn't relate to how they live. I'm also a single child, single parent, I was going to say. I'm also an only child because I'm my mom's only child. And I lived with her, obviously. So I don't even have anybody to process this with in the house. Right. It's just me in my head.
Right.
So that's kind of when I realized something was different. And that's when I wanted my dad to be there. I think more so than craving fatherhood, because my view of having my dad was, I see him occasionally. Sometimes I go with him because, again, I think that's just how it is. Sometimes you at dad's house, sometimes you at mom's house. I'm thinking every kid lives like this.
Right.
So more than at that young age, and this is from ages like, because I moved out there, I'm like 7 years old, from like 7 to like 10 or whatever. At those younger ages, more so than craving fatherhood, I'm more so craving the nuclear family dynamic. I wish mom and dad lived in the same house together, so I could be like my friend down the street, or so I could be like them on TV. Like now I'm like, because again, I'd only seen that dynamic on TV. It's fake. Now I'm seeing it in real life. I'm like, oh, this is really how people live.
It's not fake.
We're doing it wrong. I feel insecure. You know what I mean? I feel, you know what I mean? I don't feel the same as everyone else. So I think that's when it first hit me. And again, this is kind of where I traced back, struggling with insecurity growing up, struggling with the lack of confidence because I didn't have somebody like that from a father figure standpoint speaking into me, but also just there to like show up. I feel like I'm already like lacking because it's just me and mom showing up to the game or showing up to the parent teacher conference and all of that. So that was like my earliest memory of like feeling away, I guess, feeling differently. And then as you get older, as you get into your preteen and early teenage years, and it's like, those are the years where you're coming into adulthood and being a man. So now it's just like, now it's like you're craving the fatherhood. Like, where are you to like teach me how to do certain things? Like, I'm trying to play sports and try out for basketball and football. And it's like, I'm learning. Everybody else got their dads to go shoot hoops with, to like similar to what you said, right? I'm trying to figure it out on myself. I'm out on the court by myself trying to figure it out. Right. And that those years are really kind of where, craving that fatherhood kind of really impacted me. So when you ask like how was it with like the in and out, I would say early on I didn't really notice it. It wasn't really until I got into my formative years, I would say like my preteen and teenage years, where it really started to make a difference. And I will say it hurt. So what you said in sharing your story about how it hurt the second time you met your dad and then he dropped off, that hurt more than not knowing him. And I could relate to that because that's how it was for me, because like you have the memories of the good times, you know how it can be, but then it's like on the days where you're not seeing him or hearing from him, you're like, man, like what happened to that? Yeah. You start to kind of reminisce. So then there's also like this feeling of you definitely feel unwanted because you feel like you're not a priority. And literally like my dad would actually say that coming out to see me was an inconvenience to him because we moved, like I said, to Fairfield. He lives in San Francisco, so about an hour away. And so it was an inconvenience.
Now I'm gonna get emotional. See?
Yeah.
I wasn't even emotional for me. See?
He literally said those words, like, I'm not making that up.
Wow.
And again, like, as you get older, you realize that those things are more nuanced, because while I can never understand traveling however long to see my kids as an inconvenience, I don't care if my kid's halfway around the world, I'm gonna go find her.
Man,
But on the flip side, again, as you get older, you realize, okay, mom did move us an hour away, right? So it's like you get older and you start to realize, okay, there's some nuance to it. Like, it wasn't all one-sided, but again, mom was, in my eyes, could do no wrong.
yeah.
So.
But I think even in that, you saying that, regardless of where you guys moved, I think of my kids now.
Yeah.
There's no space, there's no distance that I'm not going to find a way.
Yeah.
And like you said, to say that I don't want to cross a bridge or two bridges, it's an inconvenience, is wrecking me.
Yeah.
Because, and that's what it was for me. You didn't want to fight.
Right.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, you saw me. You saw me as a kid. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But the moment that I looked at my kids, you couldn't tell me they weren't my kids.
Man.
And now I seen you.
Yeah.
So now I know that I look like you.
Yeah.
So you're not gonna put up more of a fight. And that's the thing too. He said, no, I had a feeling.
Yeah.
I had a feeling you were my kid. Like, bro, why didn't you fight then?
Yeah.
Why you didn't try harder? I wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
To try harder.
Man.
Now the insecure. Now those insecurities.
Exactly.
Like, man, I wasn't good enough for this guy who's supposed to be my dad.
Right.
He didn't want to fight, but you got a whole nother family that you was willing to fight for, and you got sons.
Yeah.
So that, like, saying that like that was crazy.
Oh, I get it, because I mean, same boat, right? Again, we're both dads, and there's no length I wouldn't go to see my daughter, right? Like, even if God forbid Ati and I weren't together, which ain't gonna happen. Putting that on record.
Shouts out to God,
we locked in,
because that's not happening.
Shout out to God. But even if for some reason there was a different scenario, we'll call it an alternate universe,
Spider-Verse,
where we weren't together, like, regardless of what's going on between me and your mom, like, I'm always gonna make an effort to see you. I don't care if she moves halfway around the world. We hopping on a flight, or I'll move there too, right? Like, and I think that's what you're speaking to. There's a level of selfishness versus selflessness, and that we didn't see with our dads, right? It's like, you made this about you. It's an inconvenience across two bridges. I feel you. It's far, but you're thinking about you as opposed to your kid that's over there that needs his dad.
You're thinking about you, and that's one of the craziest things of becoming a parent.
Yeah,
it's one of the most selfless things you could do.
Yeah,
is to, and my older sister actually told me this, which was a nugget. She said, even the moment that you have the thought to want to be a parent is one of the most selfless things you can do. Because you're already acknowledging that it's no longer about you.
Yeah,
it's not going to be about you.
That's good.
Like, you're going to be responsible for another human being.
Yeah.
And
that's good.
I always remember that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm making a decision, a conscious decision.
Which is, again, I can point back to God and the boundaries and the vision that he set for marriage, right? Like, it was supposed to start with marriage, a man and a woman becoming one. Yeah. And then having children, because then those decisions can be made intentionally, right? We're hopefully already cultivating our marriage. We're good. We're on the same page. And then those decisions to have children can be made with intent versus if you just, you just out here single, dating around, doing what you do, right? Yeah. Baby just come, right? Yeah. Like, fair, you probably wasn't even, you know what I mean? How many people do we know wasn't even planning to have kids? Right. And it's like, that's, and shout out to, because we know there's a lot of parents who weren't planning to have kids and are great parents. So not that that's like, any bearing on that. But again, you see God's intent was, again, to make us not even have to, God is so good. He didn't even want us to have to think about or deal with some of the things that we go through. Like, a lot of the things that we go through in this life, sure, there's a lot that we can't control. Right. But there are a lot of things that are the result of, like, poor choices. For sure. And God is so good that it's like, the boundaries he set weren't so, again, to keep us from something on the negatives, the negative idea, right? Like I just don't want you to do that. I want to spoil your fun. It's more so I want to keep you from the heartache that this is going to cause.
Yeah, for sure.
So
and that them and I giving our lives to the Lord and kind of making that decision to say yes and do it the way that He intended.
Yeah,
is I didn't have it was hard to have a reference point or an example of a godly marriage.
Yeah.
So I didn't see that.
Yeah, same.
I saw good marriages. I saw good parenting. But ultimately, I never saw a Jesus-centered marriage where, when we decided to give our lives to the Lord and get married and have kids, there was a foundation that was built that we together spent time with the Lord, individually with the Lord, prayed about having kids and what that was going to look like. It wasn't like, hey, we might have a child and whatever circumstance is going to be gone. Like, no, we made a covenant before God.
Yeah.
We made a covenant before God, and this is to the end.
Yeah.
We are going to figure it out.
We locked in.
Yes, we are going to figure it out. You might not like me today. Cool.
Try again tomorrow.
Because I'm not going nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good, man. That's good. But yeah, so I guess going back to a little bit of my story. So again, a lot of inconsistency. And again, I don't want to sit here and like bash him. There were good times too, and there were times where he did cross those bridges, right? So it wasn't like
he never
came out, right? So I don't want to sit here and paint it like that. But there was this inconsistency, and then going back to your question about like what did that do and how was it to process? I think for me, there was a lack of confidence that stemmed from that because I could never really rely on like you showing up.
Yeah,
I could never really truly rely on like that need of, craving a father, like being met. And I think that spread into other things in terms of like lack of confidence, like never really believing in myself to do anything, right? Like shying away from, how we talked about before with creativity, shying away from certain projects and pursuits, shying away even from, sports, or kind of like putting in like the work ethic because it's like, why even try, right? Like, for what? You know what I mean? Who am I making proud? right. So yeah, man. There was a lot of that, but on the flip side, again, there was also some motivation because I knew I wanted to do things differently. Like I knew, like I've always from a young age, like being that little kid, I always wanted to have my own family. Like again, shout out to God because I can honestly say I'm living my dream right now because I've always wanted to have a wife and a child and like a family. Like, so what I'm living in right now by the grace of God is like a dream come true. Yeah. Like from a kid, again, watching those sitcoms, Boy Meets World and all of that. Like I wanted that. I was like, I didn't have that as a kid. So I'm like, I want to be the dad. You know what I mean? I want that. It too. I want that, man.
You doing it.
Thank you.
Killing it.
Glory to God, man. I'm just trying to figure it out. Y'all know how it is being parents. We don't know what we doing.
But you doing it.
Man, but yeah, so I wanted that, right? And again, there's motivation from what dad didn't do to like do it differently. But just like you mentioned that you had this fear of, man, am I going to turn out just like my dad? I relate to that so much because I had that exact same fear. Like I shared that with IT. Like one of my biggest fears, even before we knew we were having Zoe, like one of my biggest fears was, am I going to turn out just like my dad and not be around, be inconsistent, all of the things? Because one conversation I did have with my dad was, so for more context, he didn't have a great relationship with his dad. His dad was actually not in the picture. He was actually raised by his stepdad. That's who he called dad growing up. His biological dad just not in the picture. But he knew him, right? He knew who the guy was. He knew where he lived and all that. So when he got older, and when I was born, again, I talked to my dad about this. He told me this story. When I was born, I'm probably about a year old. He takes me over to his biological dad's house and says, in so many words, "This is my son. This is your grandson. I just wanted you to see him because I want to let you know face to face that I'm going to be better than you were. I'm not going to do what you did." So he tells him that. He takes me over there and tells him, like, I'm going to be better than you were. Tells him face to face. And then failed at that. So for me, hearing that story, I'm like, oh, he started out with good intentions and then he failed. So I know I want to have kids, and then fast forward, so I know I have a kid on the way. I have good intentions right now. What's going to happen in the next 3, 5, 6, 10 years? Am I going to fail?
No.
Because he started with good intentions.
Right.
So that, to me, like, I could easily fall in that same trap and follow down that same path. Because even though I have good intentions and I can tell myself I'm never going to be like that, that's what he did.
Right.
Right. So in my mind, I'm like, whoa,
Sheesh.
am I gonna be
Wow.
like my dad? So that was a very, like, when you mentioned like that fear of turning into him, like, I relate to that so much because that was literally my fear.
Breaking those generational curses.
Yeah. And again, shout out to God. And I've had this conversation with other people, and what they've said in response is that, no, you know Jesus, your dad doesn't know Jesus, right? And that is exactly the difference, right? When we give glory to God, that's what we mean. Because, yeah, I would have followed in that path if it wasn't for Jesus, right? Like, when we talk about breaking generational curses, breaking those patterns, like, that's all glory to God. Like, I didn't do that on my own. That was just a matter of surrendering to him, and then he took lead. And he's the one that makes sure that I'm here even day to day. Like, I know I can't leave God's side because he's the one that's leading me and helping me do this day to day. Right?
There's no way.
Yeah.
Without Jesus at the center. Speaking for me personally.
Yeah.
I just don't know how I would have been able to parent with trying to process what's going on in my head and trying to fight all of these questions of, am I good enough?
Yeah.
Am I going to be good enough for her? Is she going to look at me a certain way? Like, how am I going to ever stand up to the expectations or fulfill that? Yeah. Because I didn't see it. I don't know what it looks like. Right. I'm already like ready to run away. Yeah. Because that's kind of how I'm wired. Right. Talked about that last time. I will cut and run as quick as I can. So I really look at the relationship with Jesus and actually like getting in front of him and getting his presence and wrestling that stuff. Yeah. Has completely changed my 100% perspective on what it looks like. Same. To be a dad. Same. And there's no greater blueprint or manual than the word of God, because God has a lot to say about fatherhood. He does, right? The Bible refers to him as our father. Yep. Right? He's our father, right? So it's like, again, for us, again, like, not having great examples firsthand anyway, there was no other way to learn how to do this right without Jesus, without getting into the word. We gonna go deep, aren't we? Man, all right. We just getting started. So, yeah, I do. Do we have permission to go a little bit deep? Because I have a question I want to ask you. Let's do it. And we here now. You had to walk through a lot of stuff in, very, very impactful years, in your early teens, late teens. Yeah. And you have mentioned you lost your mom at 16 years old. Yeah. So I got to have conversations with my mom. Yeah. About it. And not only having a in and out relationship with your dad and struggling with that, You lose your mom at 16.
Right.
You can't have certain conversations.
Right.
The question I want to ask is, now, how has God showed up in those situations? Because you can't have a conversation with your mom about certain things.
Right.
You necessarily aren't having conversations with your dad. How has God showed up in those moments to get you through that that part of your life, or even in that? Because you mentioned you grew up, with your mom being a prayer warrior, your grandmother being a prayer warrior. So you lose your mom at 16. Like, I'm sure your grandma has to be playing just the biggest role.
Definitely.
But how does God meet you? In that? That's
a great question. I think in a practical way, God put other people in my life to fill those voids. Like you just mentioned, my grandmother stepped up in a big way. She actually became my legal guardian after my mom died, and actually lived with her for a bit. And then her kind of filling that role immediately and kind of stepping up and being like mom and grandma was key. At the time, it was very interesting. Like when I'm 16, 17, I hated it. So my grandma and I were actually like, not really at odds, but like, me being a teenager, kind of halfway rebelling. Also, 16, you lost your mom.
Yeah.
Dad's not really around. So like, you feel like a man now. Nobody can tell you anything. My parents ain't even here. What are we talking about?
Right.
So like, again, like my grandma and I's relationship wasn't what it is today now. Like it's everything to me. But also a lot of that too was, again, like, I don't want anybody to fill that void of mom because I just lost my mom. I don't want you or anybody else to kind of step in.
For sure.
But I don't want to get too far in the weeds. We'll talk about that. We might have to have grandma on the podcast. We talk together. But she played a big role. I think another person that played a big role, about a year before my mom died, she actually got married. And so I had my stepdad who kind of filled a little bit of that void too. He was there at the house. He was there for every moment. Like when my mom was sick, all of the things he was there. And so he definitely kind of played a big role. And then two, again, other people that I think just God just put in my life, right, from a practical standpoint to like hold me up at that standpoint, even though like my dad wasn't really around. There's one very special person named Alicia Lewis, who I call my aunt. She's more like my godmother. Her sons, I call my brothers, Matthew and Blake. I actually moved in with them after my mom died so I could finish high school and not have to move. So to set the scene, I'm in Fairfield, again, still living there when mom dies, living with mom. Stepdad moved out. So we had to move out of the house in Fairfield because it got foreclosed on. That's a whole nother story. We gonna unpack all the trauma.
All the trauma.
So stepdad moved. He lived about an hour away. He lived in Antioch.
Yep.
And so we had a good relationship. He was like, you can come live with me, whatever. Grandma lived in Oakland. She became my legal guardian. She's like, you can come live with me. But I'm like, when my mom dies, I'm like a junior in high school going into my senior year. And again, I'm feeling like a man now. Mm-hmm. I'm not about to move and switch schools my senior year. Yeah. Like I'm finally feeling like I'm coming into my own and I got friends and people know me, right? Like I'm not about to move somewhere my senior year and start a new school. So I put up a fight. So the Lewis family that I just mentioned, shout out to Blake and Alicia Lewis. I moved in with them. They took me in for context there. Like Alicia, we call her Leash affectionately. Her and my mom are really good friends. And then her sons, Blake and Matt, we call him Matt. Matt is my age, we're the same age. Blake is a few years older than us, his older brother. But they were my best friends growing up. Like Matt was my best friend growing up. He was the first person I met when I moved out there. And we just always kind of stayed in touch. So fast forward to losing my mom, I moved in with them and they kind of took me in and treated me like one of their kids, treated me like family. And to this day, like I love them and I owe a lot to them. So shout out to them. But when you ask like what that was like, I think God putting people in my life practically was how he sustained me. Because at this time, I'm questioning my faith. I'm halfway mad at God. And so I'm not really close to Jesus at all at this point. And then dad's still not really around. This was kind of when it was at its worst. And yeah, it was just different at that point. Like he didn't even know. So my mom died. She got really sick. She actually had cancer. She had breast cancer. And like my relationship with my dad at that point was so strained and so distant that like he didn't even know how sick she was. Like I remember calling him. So the night she died, I remember calling him and telling him like, hey, like my mom is going. And like his first words was, oh wow, she was that sick. Like, so that just shows like he didn't even see the last like few months of everything I had dealt with. So again, filling those voids, a lot of that came from other people. And you know, I realized now that was all God's doing, and he put some great people in my life that kind of helped me up and got me to where I am today. So yeah, but to kind of answer your question a bit, right? You said processing certain conversations I haven't had to have or haven't gotten the chance to have with my mom. Like that's one of my biggest, not regrets, because it's not something I can take back, but I do miss that a lot. Like being able to have certain conversations now that I'm an adult.
Yeah.
And even her seeing some of the milestones that I've experienced. Like she never got to meet my wife or daughter. Yeah. I have been able to have, so today, to kind of fast forward to 2025, my relationship with my dad is still, it's interesting. We're in a phase, and this is how good God is. We're definitely in a phase of like restoration and rebuilding. So to kind of give you the timeline again, dad's in and out of my life as a kid, teenage years kind of non-existent. As I get into my early 20s to mid 20s, we're now contentious. The relationship's bad. We see each other and we yelling, cussing each other out. All kind of things. Like it's just bad for a number of reasons I won't really get into right now, but it's just not good at all.
Right.
Now in 2025, there is a lot more peace. We're cordial, we're cool, we check in, we call each other from time to time. There's not really any, points of contention. We're not arguing. Shout out to God for doing the work in me, because I don't let certain things get to me. But also too, like shout out to God, I think too, for what he's done in him. He's not a believer, but I can tell that he's definitely got a bit of a softer heart. Him and I were able to be cordial. He's come to church. I think you met him actually.
I did.
Did you meet him at the church?
I did.
Okay.
On accident.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm gonna be real with you. He introduced himself. He was like, "Yeah, I'm Dom's dad.
Yeah.
He just baptized my daughter," and I low key, I didn't even be like, "Yeah, no, I know him." Like I just kind of let it ride.
He's like,
I was like, yeah, for sure, yeah. I didn't tell him like, yeah, that's kind of like my brother too. You know what I'm saying? Like we do life together.
I feel you. I wouldn't have wanted to, because he would. It's probably best that you didn't, because he's the type that like he's gonna talk a lot, so he probably would have tried to run you down.
Yeah,
for
I just kind of let it ride.
Yeah, like yeah. But yeah, man. So today, it's a little bit better. And so because of that, we have had to have some conversations. I think it's interesting too. Like God is faithful, because again, certain conversations I didn't get to have with my mom, I have gotten to have some of those, right? Like the nuance, the why, similar to your dad, and your situation. And he shared stories about, just the ins and outs of the relationship he had with my mom and how they were back and forth. And so I have, again, shout out to God, I've gotten a bit more clarity, and that's, why I do know a little bit more. I would love, again, it's all from his bias. I don't really get to hear from mom. Yeah. I'm gonna have that conversation in heaven one day, God willing. But, so I've gotten some clarity on like why things were the way they were. And again, just being, older, 32 now, right. I get it. Like I know, I understand how these things work. I have brothers and friends that are going through similar situations now. Yeah. With, they have kids, maybe they're not with their kid's mother, and it gets rocky. Yeah. It gets crazy. Yeah. So yeah, God is good. And he's still moving. Yeah. We have some hurt. Yeah. We both have some hurt. Yeah. And some chips on our shoulders. Yeah. For sure. Which have, in a sense, it has allowed us to grow in ways we probably didn't think we would grow. And we would become the fathers that we are. Yeah.
which is amazing.
Yeah.
As well. Like, take the hurt and the trauma for what it is, and God being faithful.
Yeah.
And just meeting us where we were.
Right.
And allowing us time to even grow. And I think being patient with us.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
Not rushing us through some of the stuff we're trying to figure out.
Right. And then I think too, again, and you know, we'll keep saying how faithful God is.
It's my favorite thing to say.
I think one thing too is that, like, even though our relationships with our dad were what they were, and when a lot of times when you think about what your parents taught you growing up, right, you think about the positives, right? Like, what did they actually say to you? How did they actually kind of walk out to teach you about life? I think on the flip side, you also learn like what not to do from people. So when I think about my dad, I can't fully discredit him for everything, is because you might not have always taught me what to do, but you definitely taught me what not to do in a lot of instances, right? So, and that to me is valid, because when you look through the Bible, for example, there are a lot of stories in there that teach us what not to do.
Right.
God teaches us what to do, but there's also a lot of stories where we are meant to learn from the mistakes of others and learn what not to do. So even in a roundabout way, I can still say my dad taught me a lot, even if it was a lot of what not to do.
For sure.
Yeah.
Like, you literally showed me what it looks like to not be a dad.
Yeah.
Fully.
Yeah.
To not be a dad. Yeah, it had its consequences.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I know what I'm never going to do.
Right.
Like, for my kids, I think my biggest struggle with not having my dad was trying to build my relationship with my Heavenly Father. I think that was the biggest struggle for me.
Yeah, talk about that.
Coming to Christ was because I didn't have a relationship with my earthly father. When I even after I was, walking it out for a little bit, I didn't know how to have a relationship with my Heavenly Father. Because he is referred to as our Father in heaven.
Yeah.
I just looked at my relationship with God.
Yeah.
Like my relationship with my dad. So it was super hard for me to get into God's presence and have a conversation.
Yeah.
Because I never had to do it before.
Right.
With a male.
Yeah.
So regardless of what I would go through, if I was struggling or the day was hard, I was like, I'm gonna figure it out on my own.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how to have that conversation. I've never ran home and had a tough day and been like, Dad.
Yeah, went to go talk to Dad about it. Yeah.
Rough.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't know how to do that with God.
Yeah.
And that was, it was so hard for me to ever build a relationship with God in the beginning. Like, to build a relationship with my Heavenly Father. Because all I thought about was, when is he going to let me down?
Wow.
At some point, Jesus is going to let me down. Because every other male let me down.
Yeah.
My dad was the first person to let me down. And in my head, when people passed away, like, you let me down.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was all like men. So it was like, no, you let me down. Oh, it's another person that let me down.
Yeah.
Or I'll have a relationship with somebody who was like a father figure and then dipped. I was like, oh, this is normal.
Yeah.
So at some point, like, when is God gonna let me down?
Yeah.
And then when we first got saved, like our first year, I had so many family members die. Then I'm mad at God. Like, knew it.
Right.
Knew it. it was gonna happen.
Yeah.
He was gonna let me down. And so that was kind of like how I viewed it. And it was hard for me to get past, and so much time wrestling with it and being mad at God, but having community and people around me that were very intentional about, it might hurt, you might feel some type of way, but don't neglect the relationship. Don't neglect the time in prayer. Don't neglect the word. And then you spend time and you realize that he didn't let me down.
Right.
He wasn't a bad father.
Right.
He was not my earthly father. But you got to wrestle that stuff out.
Yeah, man.
And that was tough.
Nah, you preaching right now, and it's crazy. That's another thing that like I feel like we have in common. So for me, it was. So I like how you shared that, right? Like even losing family members, you looked at it as like them dying let you down, even though it's like right, they couldn't control that. I relate to that 1,000% because I felt very similar, more so than the being let down. It was the feelings of being left behind or like left alone, right? Yeah. Like again, dad wasn't really in the picture, so I looked at it and I internalized that as you left me.
Right.
You left me to fend for myself. You left me to figure out how to become a man on my own. Right. Like everything I learned about manhood, that didn't come from you. Like I learned how to. There's this scene in The Fresh Prince where
my favorite episode.
I learned how to shoot hoops without him. Learned how to shave without him. But literally learned how to do that without him.
That's my favorite episode in anything because it really like resonates.
Yeah. Why you don't want me, man? That episode, man.
I cry every single time.
I cried the first time I saw that episode.
Every single time I cry.
Yeah. Yeah, but literally learned like about sex without him. Learned everything. Like how to talk to girls. Like all of the things that most guys learn from their dad. Yeah. Like
we said, I married a fine honey without him. Like everything. Like you know what I mean? Like everything.
Right. And so for me, him not being there felt like being left alone, left behind. And I internalized that as like, oh, people I love are going to leave me.
Yeah.
Mom dies.
Yeah.
She left me.
Yeah.
Again, out of her control, but you left me here. You're my only parent.
Yep.
How I see it.
Yeah.
Right. You left me. And then again, I told you house got foreclosed on. Stepdad moves back to his old house. You left me. And again, that wasn't the reality.
Nope.
He said, come with me. And we stayed in good relationship. But the kid is like, oh, you left me too. Right.
Bro, I'm telling you that deceit.
Yeah. And so when it came to God, like, when are you gonna leave me? When are you gonna be done with me?
Yep. Oh man.
Like and even one thing I remember talking to somebody about was like even like again pre-Jesus, pre-marriage. You know, I told you I dated for years. I'm gonna be transparent. We were 9 years in when I proposed. All of that pre-Jesus. Well, not the proposal was Jesus. The first 8 years pre-Jesus for sure. And I remember somebody asking me, right, like, just like what my plan was, like why we had been together so long, what were we doing? And the person at the time, like, they knew a little bit about my story, like my mom and all of that. And this person completely like read me. It was like, oh, are you clinging to her because like you feel like people leave you? And like that blew my mind. Yeah. And I was like, whoa. Yeah. Like, and I think that was one thing God showed me later on. Like there was like this craving for like people I love to like not leave, like just stay, just be like, am I good enough? Like, are you going to stay like for me? And again, like having this, you know, feeling like mom left you, feeling like dad left you, feeling like stepdad left you, right? Feeling like everybody you love leaves you, right? That again contributed to that anxiety, to that fear, to that worry. Obviously, like again, God is good and He's faithful, and the Bible says He'll never leave us or forsake us. But to your point, right? When you think about all your earthly relationships, right? That's the only way you know how to think about relationships. So when you think about a relationship with God, it's like, okay, are you going to leave me? Are you going to be tired with me? Am I going to mess up one too many times? And you're like, nope, done.
Right.
So,
I mean, ultimately that's it, right? The basis of even this conversation is how did your dad, what is fatherhood? How did it shape you as a child?
yeah.
And not only did it have an impact on my relationships around me growing up, it had an effect on my relationship with God.
Yeah.
And it just skewed my view
Yeah.
of how to be a father.
Yeah.
And ultimately, there needed to be some unlearning.
Yes.
And there needed to be some unpacking of what really is going on. And shouts out to Tanya.
Shout out to Tanya. That's a good name drop.
For allowing me to sit with some stuff.
Tanya's going to be on the show, by the way. This Tanya that we're speaking of, she's going to
be on here. And she allowed me to like sit with stuff and wrestle with stuff. And finding out that a lot of how I process, why I process, is a result of my dad.
Yeah. Man, Tanya, I just want to give some context to everybody listening who doesn't know Tanya. Tanya is first of all, I would say a really good friend to us, leader, mentor. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist. So she knows what she's doing. In terms of like helping us get to the bottom of our trauma. I know you've had some really good conversations and sessions with Tanya. I have too.
For sure.
For like a number of people in our community have.
So first of all, shouts out to therapy.
Yeah, shout out to therapy.
To partnering Jesus with therapy.
Yes.
I am a huge advocate now.
Oh yeah.
Having walked through what we walked through to.
Oh yeah.
You could be a grown man and it's okay to go to therapy.
Oh yeah.
You're not any less of or less than because you went to therapy and try to work some stuff out.
Yeah.
Like it's okay. You don't just have to go to the barbershop.
Right.
Like you can come to the barbershop and I'll help you. But go like to a professional.
Yeah.
And partner that with the Lord.
That's good.
It doesn't get better
than that. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
and I think we went on we had a nice conversation and I'm looking at our outline and our notes and we just happened to like answer questions.
We did. I think we answered all of the questions
without even having to pose the questions. And that's always good.
That is.
Conversation was great. I'm surprised. I mean, I got choked up a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna
You ain't
lie.
let them fall though. I was looking at you.
You had me though. Close. Close. I was getting a little emotional, but yeah, man, I think our upbringing definitely had a impact on where we are. And I think this is probably going to have to be a part 2.
Yeah.
To jump into actually us being fathers.
Yeah, we haven't even scratched the surface.
We haven't scratched the surface. What it looks like to be a father.
Yeah.
Walking into it scared, fearful,
man,
terrified,
not knowing what we doing.
Still don't know what I'm doing.
Still don't know what I'm doing.
My kids are alive still. That's a dub.
That's the win. That's the real win.
So I got a 5-year-old. She made it to 5.
That's wild too.
Like I won.
You did it.
Need a ring or something.
You did. Hey man.
Need a chip.
Hey.
That's a chip.
Listen, like you said, breaking generational curses. Already doing a little bit better than our dads did. The bar was low.
Bro, that bar was low.
But we
shouts out to Pops for leaving. You didn't even put a bar up, dog. Like that's what's crazy though. You didn't even give me a bar.
Oh no.
Like you had to jump over a bar. I didn't have to jump over a bar. He forgot it.
And my bar was pretty low. I was able to just step over that.
Yeah,
we won't do that. No, shout out to again, all glory to God because I'll speak for myself, but I know you're the same, right? Like it's not me.
Yeah.
Right? Like me being a present father, active father, hopefully a good dad. It isn't me. That's all.
Right.
Testament to Jesus and what he's done in my life.
All jokes aside, I'm not gonna sit here and bash dude. Like there's a story and
right.
I figured it out, so I don't want to bash. That's how I joke. That's how I cope.
Yeah, we laugh.
I laugh. I have to laugh
get through the pain.
trauma. You know, I have to laugh,
you know?
laugh through the trauma. But yeah, ultimately, it's not. This has me being a dad or how I'm fathering my kids has nothing to do with me because I didn't even know what it looked like. So ultimately, it's all Jesus.
It is.
He's showed me how to be a dad. He's shown me how to be a father by being a really, really good father.
Man, amen to that.
To me.
Yeah.
I don't even deserve none of it.
Yeah.
Like I don't deserve what he's given. And I think that in itself has allowed me to let go of some stuff and not hold on to some stuff with just God's patience with me and continuing to love me through everything.
Yeah.
Has allowed me to kind of drop some of the stuff that I was carrying and has allowed me to even just be the dad that I am.
Yeah, man.
Today. But this is definitely part 1, and we definitely gonna have to jump.
We gotta run this back.
A part 2 of just us being
dads.
Us being dads and what that looks like for the both of us.
Yeah, what that day-to-day is like.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a good one. Man, thanks for getting vulnerable on my couch, bro.
I appreciate you. You will have me teared up.
Yeah,
I got a little emotional today.
We're gonna, it's a lot of emotions running high. First episode dropped.
Yeah, man, I appreciate this conversation.
Yeah,
we gonna continue it. We gonna run it back.
We gonna keep it going.
Us as dads.
Yeah,
crazy.
It's nuts.
But yeah, man,
appreciate you, bro.
Yeah, another one.
Yes, sir.
Another episode in the books.
You did it,
man. This is the Kingdom Blueprint Podcast.